what's up everybody? This is your friend LA Knight, and I am back, finally, after months and months and months and months. I know it's been forever. I'm so sorry. I'm a terrible person. I know. This is my September, well actually it's my August, September, October wrap-up, although surprisingly I did not read as much as I would have liked to have read during those 3 months, and my November TBR podcast. I have, real quick, some announcements. I have moved to Patreon, or expanded to Patreon. I'm still on YouTube, obviously, and Tumblr, obviously, but I'm also on Patreon, so please support me on Patreon, because of the other thing, which is I lost my job. I lost my job, and I didn't get laid off or anything like that. I got fired. And the reason they fired me is because I'm disabled. Yeah. So, we are pursuing legal action about that, but this is America, and ableism is a thing, obviously, or I wouldn't have gotten fired. And so I can't guarantee that that's going to go anywhere. Also, it's going to take forever. So, in the meantime, I am trying to file for unemployment. Not really working out for me so well because of the whole disabled thing. I'm trying to find another job. Also not working out for me very well for the same reason. And I'm asking for people to check me out on Patreon. So check me out on Patreon. Anyway, so business aside, let's get on to the actual meat of the podcast. So, August, September, and October were not very productive for me because I was working, like, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, and getting sick as a result, and I eventually actually got slammed with the flu. Even though I got the flu shot in September, I was out for a week. I couldn't get out of bed, except to throw up. It was terrible. So I didn't do a lot of reading, but I did manage to get some reading done. I basically got about a month's worth of reading done in about 3 months, and it's sad. Starting with middle grade, I finally, after like 4 months, managed to finish Belle Prater's Boy by Ruth White. It was a reread for me. I read it back in like 4th grade, and I like to revisit the books that I read back then and see how they hold up. This one was about how I remembered it. It's not great. It's your typical 1970s, 1980s contemporary middle grade, barely 10 pages long, practically. At least it felt like it. It's actually like 190 pages. It's very short, though. It did deal with a lot of interesting, deep things that most books back then didn't really deal with. The main character has PTSD because she found her dad's dead body after he committed suicide. It deals a little bit with sexism, which, considering when it came out, is kind of interesting. It's an interesting book, but at the same time, the Belle Prater's Boy, Woodrow is his name, there's a little bit of stuff going on with him that I'm just like, I don't really, like, as a kid I didn't care, but now I'm like, I don't feel that they handled that well. I read Furthermore by Tara Mafi. It took me a long time to get through because, as I mentioned in my last TBR wrap-up video, which was back in May, I think, the abuse was a problem. It took me a long time to, I eventually ended up having to listen to it on audiobook because I just couldn't, I was getting so angry that, like, my hands would shake and I'd have to put the book down. But the book was beautifully written and the world building was fantastic and it was so creative. I just really wish the mom would have gotten eaten by a monster or hit by a bus or something. And, like, I realized that, like, it would have been sad for the dad, but at the same time, that bitch needed to go. I finally finished The Night Parade by Catherine Tanquary. Same thing, except I didn't get a chance to listen to it on audiobook because there was no audiobook for this book for some reason, even though it's really cool. World building's great. Love the main character. Hate the parents. Especially the dad. Dad's super abusive. I hate him. I love the grandma. Grandma's great. I read Flathbog's Gold by M.L. Foreman. That was giving me trouble because it's a little bit sexist, and it's, to quote my friend Annabelle, a total sausage fest. There are no girls in this book. Now, my roommate, I.K. Scott, has read all the books that are out, and she says that girls pop up in, like, book 3, but that doesn't fix book 1. I did enjoy it anyway. It was like a more readable Hobbit, like a Hobbit with more modern sensibilities, I guess. But still, like, ML Foreman needs to step up his game, you know? And then I read The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman, and I felt so bad because my sister bought it for me like 3 years ago, and she had it signed. He was at her college where she works, and she got it signed for me and brought it to me, and because she was like, "You like Neil Gaiman, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and we were talking about it, and I was like, "I wish I could get The Sleeper and the Spindle, but I can't because it's so expensive, because it's like beautifully illustrated, and it's got like this gold on the cover and stuff. That's why it's expensive." And so she brought it, and she was like, "By the way, ta-da!" And I was like, "Oh my god!" And I freaked out, and I didn't read it for like 3 years. And I finally read it while I was sick because it was short, so it was easy to read. And it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful book, and I feel terrible that I took so long to read it. I read The City Sun by Tom Pollock, which is like, speaking of Neil Gaiman, which is like the book Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, where he writes about like this magical London that exists underneath the skin of normal London. That's what The City Sun is about, except it's done in a different way. It's a lot more modern. Neverwhere was very much about the history of London and how that informed the magical London, and this was more about how the modern city created this magical London. There were a lot of plot twists that I didn't see coming. It was a really interesting book. The only thing is that there's some stuff in there that, like, I'm not going to say read it definitely all the time to everybody, because there's, like, one of the female characters gets assaulted by a teacher, so if you can't handle that, like, obviously don't read it. The main character's dad has serious depression, so he was very absent from her life for a lot, and she was neglected. So, like, if that's a thing that triggers you, obviously, you know, be wary of that. So, like, I really enjoyed it, but be careful when you read it, because there's some heavy stuff in there. I read Disney's Once Upon a Dream by Liz Braswell, which is one of the quote-unquote Twisted Tales trilogy. So far it's a trilogy, and I don't think they're coming out with any more. I wish they would, because I really enjoyed Once Upon a Dream, but it's not really a retelling of the animated Disney Beauty and the Beast, or Beauty and the Beast, that's the third one, Sleeping Beauty, but more a sequel, sort of. It asks the question, what would have happened if at the end of the animated oh my god, why do I keep doing that? Sleeping Beauty, if instead of waking up when Philip kissed her, instead of Aurora waking up, Philip falls asleep. And what happens, and like why that happened, like, and you know, it was really interesting. It really dealt with depression though. Aurora in this has depression, and it's shown really well, and it's also shown that a lot of parents really miss that. Like, they didn't get it. And that was actually one of the things that I thought they handled this really well. Philip, obviously, because he's the prince, for those who don't know. Philip and Aurora, they literally meet in a glade, fall in love, quote unquote, at first sight. You know, love at true love's kiss, love at first sight, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't really know her. And so during the events of the book, he finds out that she has depression. And he's like, this isn't you. You're happy and blah. And she's like, no, you just caught me on a good day. Like a really good day. And he's like, oh. And instead of being an asshole about it, which is what I was worried was going to happen, he's really good about it. So I really it's really good, but like there's some things in it that it's not for everybody, and you know, obviously they deal with depression, which is a big thing. So like if you are interested in this sort of thing, just keep that in mind. I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shannon McGuire. I think that's how you pronounce her name. It's the sequel to Every Heart a Doorway, which I have reviewed already on this channel. It's so good, but so much abuse. So much low-key abuse. So bad. Also, one of the two lesbian characters dies. So there's that. But, like, the thing is that you knew going into it, because if you'd read the first book, that character was going to die, because she was dead in the first book. So, like, there's that, but I don't know. Like, this is the second book in the series that has, like, a tragic queer character. The first one being, Cade from Every Heart a Doorway, and him being trans and his family, like, disowning him and stuff. So I'm wondering if in the next book, the third book that comes out in January, is someone gonna get some happiness? Like, that would be nice. I read Ivory and Bone by Julie Eschbau, which is a gender-bent retelling of Pride and Prejudice set during the Paleolithic era, I believe. You know, cave people and stuff. It's so good. I love it so much. I had to listen to it on audiobook because it's written in a weird way, and I was having difficulty with that, but it's so good. Oh my goodness. And I read Three Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake, which I have so many feelings about that, and I am going to review it at some point in the next 2 months. See, that is one good thing about the fact that I got, or I guess an upside to me getting fired, is now I have more time to devote to this. But it's so good. It's so good. And I was expecting, there is some abuse of one of the characters, but it doesn't happen very often, and the character who is the abuser isn't there a lot, so that's good. I was expecting a lot more abuse, actually, based on the premise of the book. I read The Mammoth Hunters by Jean M. Auel, finally. It's, like, gigantic. It's like the size of The Wheel of Time. Like, one of the Wheel of Time books. That's how big The Mammoth Hunters is. It's huge. It's about, it's one of the sequels to The Clan of the Cave Bear. It's a prehistoric, historical adventure about this girl named Ayla and her life with, in this book, she has gotten away from the Neanderthals who raised her. She was cursed with death, quote unquote, so they basically treated her like she was dead. And that was in the first book, and in the second book, she was living all by herself in the middle of this valley, and then she meets it, which that's why the second book is called The Valley of Horses, and then she meets this guy named John Delar, and they end up falling in love, and there's like a lot of complications and stuff, and he's like, you know, you need to learn how to be around humans, non-Neanderthals, and she's like, okay. So the second book ended with them meeting new people. So in The Mammoth Hunters, it's her life with these new people, with the Mamutoi is what they're called, the Mammoth Hunters, and how she adapts to their ways and learns their ways, and they learn about her, and they end up, like, you know, everyone's changed for the better. You know, it's an interesting book, and you learn so much about how, like, tools were made and the way animals behaved and just really cool stuff. And that's actually why I really like the series. The only thing that I didn't like about that specific book was there was a lot of romantic drama, and that is not what I'm here for. I hate the romantic drama. Oh no, I can't. And then, because I have all this time to read now, because I have all this time to read now, I read the sequel, The Plains of Passage, which is the quote-unquote travel book, that's what the author calls it, where Ayla and John Delar decide that they're going to leave the Mamutoi because they want to go back to where John Delar is from, which was like, he is gone for like 5 years from where he's from. And so it's them traveling and meeting new people, and everyone thinks they're demons. It's hilarious because horses haven't been domesticated yet, and dogs aren't a thing. Like, dogs don't exist yet because dogs are basically dogs evolved from wolves that were somehow domesticated by humans. And so you see, like, the seeds of domestication of horses and dogs in the book, but Ayla and John Delar are the only ones who know how to do this at this point in this area, and so everyone who sees them is like, oh, they're evil spirits! They have horses and wolves! It's hilarious. It's so funny. But it's sad because Ayla wants to visit with people because she's lonely, and because it's just her and John Delar, and all the people are like, ah! I read Loyalty and Death by J.D. Robb, which, you know what, actually this video is going to be too long if I do a wrap-up and a TBR together, so I'm just going to do the wrap-up in this. I read Loyalty and Death by J.D. Robb. It's one of the In Death books. That one was the one where instead of dealing with a serial killer for once, they were dealing with a terrorist organization. And I actually didn't remember a lot of it, and so I missed a lot of the twist because I'm like, okay, I remember that this character is evil and a bad guy, but what about this and this? Like, this is making me doubt the fact that I'm remembering this. Like, how is this gonna go? And it was really interesting. And also, you get to see Peabody's brother, and he's so cute. I wish he would come back. And then I also read Witness in Death by J.D. Robb, which is the next book in the series. And that one was interesting, except that I really felt for the killer because she was protecting her daughter from the daughter's incestuous, abusive dad. Now, granted, the daughter was an adult, but still, you know, like, I don't know. Like, I really felt for the killer in this because it wasn't a serial killer, and I felt she did the entire world a service because the guy was a grade A asshole and deserved to die. I read Mr. Darcy's Undoing by Abigail Reynolds. Yeah, I know. I really like the Pride and Prejudice variations where, like, they change, like, one thing, and it's like, okay, how does that then change the course of the story? Because I know Pride and Prejudice so well. And so I really like that. And so I really like Abigail Reynolds because she does that a lot in a lot of her books. She has a book coming out now that I'm just like, I don't really want to read that one, where Napoleon conquered England and everyone thinks Darcy's a traitor and he's actually a spy for the English crown, which is in hiding. And I'm just like, ugh, that is not what I'm here for. That's not what I want. No, I don't think so. But I really liked Mr. Darcy's Undoing. It was a reread for me, and I liked it better the first time I read it when I was younger. But I didn't hate it, and I still enjoyed myself. It was just there were some things that I'm like, that's not okay. But at the same time, it's stuff that I see a lot in romance novels, so it's like kind of par for the course. Excuse me, I think I burped a little bit. And then I read A Natural History of Dragons. My friend Nicolette told me I should read it, and so I finally did. Apparently it's like one of her favorite series, and so I finally read it. It's so good! Oh my god! My roommate, I could see her through the little cutout in my desk. She's like making grabby hands at me. She's making pancakes, and also grabby hands, apparently. Anyway, it's so good. It's so good. The author is so good. I love it. It's so interesting. I was expecting the dragons to be able to talk like they do in Naomi Novik's Temeraire series, and they don't. They're actually animals, not people in scaly bodies. And so that was a little distracting, but other than that, like, I really enjoyed the book, except for this one thing that happened at the end that Nicolette didn't tell me about. Yeah, see, I'm not one of those people that doesn't like spoilers. If someone's gonna die or be horrifically traumatized, or you think they're gonna get horrifically traumatized, but then they don't, like they get rescued or something, or like you think someone's dead and then they come back or something like that, I need to know these things. Okay, when I saw the first Hobbit movie, not the animated one, but the first one that Peter Jackson did, and there was that thing with the hedgehog, I was like freaking out. I was with my friend Lori, and I was like yanking on her arm. I'm like, you didn't tell me the hedgehog died! And she's like, the fact that I didn't tell you should tell you that he's not gonna die. I'm like, he better not die! She's like, he's not gonna die! And I was freaking out. Like, and that was like just a minor character that wasn't even important in any way, shape, or form. So if something like that is gonna happen, I need to know about it. I read The Night Circus, finally, by Erin Morgenstern. I have a beautiful copy of The Night Circus with all this beautiful silver glittery holographic ink on the actual book. It's so pretty. And when I started it like a year ago, I was like, this isn't a YA novel, and that wasn't what I was in the mood for at the time. Well, I needed teen fiction. I was not feeling adult fiction at that point. So I set it aside, and now I wish I hadn't, because I wish I'd read it sooner, because it's so good! Oh my gosh! I highly recommend it to everybody, except that the female lead's dad is abusive and a douchebag. And then I read The Queen of the Tierling by Erica Johansson, and that was really interesting. It was not what I expected, because I heard about it because Erica Johansson got like a 7-figure deal for the Queen of the Tierling trilogy. That means she garnered a contract where she gets paid $1 million for 3 books. And it's her first book. I'm like, how did you even do that? So I've been desperate to read this book, and I am very interested in how she got $1 million, because it's a good book. I just wouldn't necessarily say it's $1 million worth of good, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's got a movie deal now, so maybe that's where some of the million came from. And then I read Sword Art Online number 4 and 5, and Sword Art Online Progressive number 2, 3, and 4. And those will be getting their own reviews at some point. Actually, everything on my TBR is going to get a review at some point if I haven't reviewed it already, except for Belle Prater's boy, because it's not really that it's not worth it. Like, I mean, it's not bad. I'm just like, I'm not feeling... I don't feel the driving urge to be like, everyone go out and read this book, and here's why. But everything else, I'm like, y'all need to read these things. Just saying. Anyway, that was my TBR. Or not my TBR. Bleh, that was my August, September, October wrap-up. Thank you guys for listening, and I want to give a shout-out to Lorian O'Brien and Whitney Hunt, my 2 patrons on Patreon. See, I already got 2 patrons! That's so cool! Lorian is one of my cool kitties, that's the tier that she's in, and Whitney is part of my Radical Squadron. And I am so grateful to you guys. I couldn't do this without you. You guys really make this worth it, because like that tells me that people are listening to me and really like what they're hearing and seeing on my Patreon and on my YouTube and on my Tumblr, and that's so cool. So thank you guys so much for being my patrons. Anyway, I will see you guys later, or talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening to me ramble for 20-something minutes about things I read in the last 3 months. And, support me on Patreon, like, comment, and subscribe to me on YouTube. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys, which books I need to, hurry up and review because you really want to know. Also, quick announcement, because of what happened with my job, I was really not in the Halloween spirit, at all. But now I'm feeling a little bit better about things, just emotionally. And so I want to do something Halloweeny, so I am doing what I'm going to call Novemberween, where I'm going to be reviewing spooky books, which I should have been doing in October, and doing spooky tags, which I also should have been doing in October, during the month of November instead, to keep the Halloween spirit alive and also to fight back against Christmas creep, because that's weird. Christmas is in I died. Christmas is in December, and I'll be doing Christmas books then. But for now, Novemberween, yo. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!